Shkoyach to everybody. Daf Yomi for Shabbos Kodesh is going to be Shabbos Mevorachim is going to be Tzadi Gimel of Bava Kamma, and we're going to start on Tzadi Beis around um, around you see exactly around around 8 lines from the bottom. Today's Daf Yomi is dedicated to Yeshua for Am Yisrael and this Eis Tzara Shmira for the Chayalim and Atzola for the Shvuyim. Amrle Rava, we are going through the 17 statements that Rava said to Rabba Bar Mari. It says Rava to Rabba Bar Mari, Minoha Milsa de Amri Inchi. Where do we know this matter which people say, Bira de Shasis Mine, Lo Tishte Beikawa, that if there's a well which you drank from, don't throw a clod of earth into it. What's the source for this idea? He says, well, clearly the source for it is, don't curse the Edomite because he's your brother. We even have to show gratitude to the Egyptians. So too, if there's a well you drank from, you have to show gratitude towards this well. Amarle Rabba Bar Mari Mana Milsa Amri Inchi Idois Dura Doina V'ilo Doina. So what's the source for this idea where somebody says to somebody else, if you'll pick up this burden with me, I'll pick it up. V'ilo, if you don't pick it up, lo doina. What's the source for this? It says, the source is based upon the pasuk. It says, Vayomer Elel Barak Im Telchi Imi V'alachti, that Barak says to Devorah, if you walk with me, I will go. If you don't go with me, I won't go. Means say, you have to have your own skin in the game too. Amarle Rabba Bar Mari, Mina Milsi Damri Inchi. What's the source for this idea? Kadhavian Zutari, Gavri, Hashtikashashishna, Dardaki. When we were young, we were considered to be men. People say, oh, you're so good, you distinguish, you're precocious. And now that we're old, people look at us as though we're infants. We look at us as with less respect. Because it's based on the fact that first says, Hashem Yomam. At first says God walked with them. Well, but later on it says in the end it says but then it says later on Hashem says I'm going to send an angel before you to guard you. So first it was Hashem and then later on the angel. Rabba Bar Mari Mina Milsadami Inchi Basar Mari Nilse Tzive Mashach. So what's the source for this idea that people say after the master of the possessions comes the fat, meaning to say that you should connect with somebody who's very wealthy and do business with him, and as a result of this, you'll also make money. What's the source of this idea? It's based upon the fact that it says, and also for Lot, who would go with Avram, there would be sheep and cattle and tents. Meaning to say, also with Lot, who went with Avram, he had sheep and cattle because of Abraham. So we finished the 17 statements. And now, since the Gemara brought earlier that whoever requests mercy for his friend, and he needs the same thing, he's going to be answered first. The Gemara brings a similar statement with respect to somebody who asks for somebody else to be punished. Somebody who asks for somebody else to be punished, he's going to be punished first. As it says, Sarah says to Abram, my wrath is upon you. And it says, Avram, then Sarah ended up dying first to eulogize her. And this, when do we say this matter? When there is a judgment on the earth, meaning to say that he can make his claim at the court for the pain that he was caused. And so therefore he should not have brought his complaints to God directly. But if he has no base to bring it to, then they could bring the matter for adjudication to heaven. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, yoser min anitzak. So it's worse for the one who cries out to God, worse than the one for whom is screamed about. Meaning to say that the person who is crying out is punished first before the one who then the one whom they're screaming out about him. And Tanyanami Achi. So it says in the Brisa, so we have a Brisa somewhere. It says, if the person cries out to me, I will hear the cries, and I'll be angry, and I will kill you. So the Brisa says, whether it's the widow or the orphan, the one who causes them to scream out about him, the verse is referring to. So but Hashem punishes the one who cries out more than the one who causes them to cry out. And so therefore, that's what's going on. Okay, so now the Gemara says, in general, do not allow the curse of a regular person, don't take it lightly. Because Avimelech cursed Sarah, he cursed her that she didn't tell she was Abraham's wife. And this curse was upheld in her descendants, as it says, when Avimelech spoke to Sarah, he said to her, behold, he is for you a kesusei naim. Amar, he said to her, since you made this from me, and you didn't reveal that he's your husband, you caused me this whole distress. May it be Hashem's will that you have children who are blind. So you have blind children. And indeed, this curse was upheld with her descendants. That Yitzchak grew blind and he was unable to see. A person should always be the one who is pursued, but not the pursuer. The most pursued birds are the turtle doves, the pigeons, and those are the ones, specifically those are the ones that are allowed on the altar. If the person says to somebody else, blind my eyes, or chop off my hand, or break my leg, then we say the person who does it is responsible. Even if he says on the condition, you'll be exempt, he's still responsible. But if he says tear my garment, on the condition you'll be exempt, then we're going to say he is indeed exempt. Why in the first clause, when it comes to attacking the person, he's always going to be liable. When it comes to attacking the object, he says, if you do it, you'll be exempt. We're going to say it's exempt. So he says, say in the first clause, and where he says, attack me and I won't, and you'll be exempt, we say he's not being accurate, because a person really doesn't waive the right on his limbs. And so therefore he really didn't mean to exempt him. Ravasi said, so but will a person waive the rights to his pain? And but nevertheless we have a case where he says, Titania Hikani or Pitzaini Amanas Liftor Patur, says strike me or wound me, and on the condition that you'll be exempt, then we're going to say he is exempt, and you will never be waive the rights for your pain. So ishtik. So Rava was quiet. He didn't know the answer. So then he said, Midi Shmiel Chaba. So Rava says to Rav Asi Bar Chama, have you heard anything about this? Amarai Hachi Amar Rav Sheishes. So Rav Sheishes said that the reason why the nichbal, the one who was wounded, can't waive on the wounds to his limbs, because it will be disrespectful to his family if he's missing his limbs, and that's blemish on the family. So Gemara says, Itmar, indeed we learned, Rabbi Yoshai Omer Mishum Pagam Mishpacha, Rav Omer Mishum She'en Oda Mocha Arash Evar Mishum. What's the reason why he can't exempt? Why he's not exempt if he did it to his limbs? He said one is because it's disrespectful to the family, and the other position is a person would never waive the rights to his limbs. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Yeshain Shu Koav. Rabbi Yochanan said, there's sometimes a person says yes, and really his intent was to say no. Like if he says wound me or strike me, or for sure make a chavoa, make a big wound on me, and he says on the condition I'll be exempt, and he says yes, it depends how he says it. If he says yeah, what exempt? Well, then clearly he's going to be liable. There's sometimes he says no, but it really means yes. For example, he says tear my garments and break my jug, and he says if I do that, will I be exempt? He says no. If he says it in expression of astonishment, it means no. Of course you're going to be exempt. I just told you to do it. Indeed, Tanya Namihachi, indeed, we went to the Brisa, Kani, Pitzaini, Amanas Liftor, wound me on the condition that you'll be exempt. The Amar Lo Hain, and he says yes. Harayesh Hain Shukuav. There are sometimes a yes, that's a no. Meaning say you're still going to be responsible. But if he says, Karas, Kasusi, Amanas Liftor, tear my garment, you'll be exempt. The Amar Lo Lav, he says, no, Hare Lav Shukain. There it's a no, where it's really a yes. Shavoras Kadi Karas Kasusicha. If he says, break my jug, and on the condition you'll be exempt, since he didn't, but if he says break my jug, since he didn't say on the condition that you'll be exempt, then the guy who does it is liable. The Ramini, we have a contradictory source. We say, it says in the parshas of the Shomrim, when a man will give to his friend an ox or a donkey or a lamb or any animal to guard, to watch, and then he'll die, or will be broken, or will take an oath, or will not see. And we learn from here, Lishmor, that it's only when he gives him the object to watch, then he's going to be responsible. But because he gave it to him to watch, but not to lose. Lishmor, to guard, and now when he gave it to him to tear. Lishmor, to watch, not to give to the poor. And so we see from here that if he gave it to him and under these circumstances, he'd be exempt, and not like the Mishnah, which says if he gave it to him under those circumstances, he'll be liable. So it says, when the object is already in the hands of the shomer to watch it, and only afterwards does it get torn or lost, if he didn't say on the condition that you're going to do this, he's going to be responsible because he was already responsible in the shmira. But the Brisa, which says that he's the Mishnah, which says he's responsible, is because he was first a shomer. But the Brisa says where he didn't get it yet, and so it was all said before, and so therefore he's going to be exempt. But no, the word lishmor means that from the Brisa it implies that the asil yadim mashma implies that we're talking about a case that had already reached his hands. And still, nevertheless, he's going to say that he's potter. So, both cases are the same case that it came into his possession. One is it came into his possession and he was guarding it. The other is it came into his possession and he's to tear, meaning to say, if you want to watch it, you can, and if you want to tear it, since he said to him before he got it to guard, for sure he's not concerned about it. And indeed, Hahu Arnica Bitstaka, there was a wallet of charity, the also Pumpadisa, that came to Pumpadisa. Afkade, Rav Yosef, Gabi Ahugav, Rav Yosef put it with a specific person to watch. And Pashaba, the guy was negligent. Also, Gan Vein Ganvur, the robbers came and they stole it. Chive Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef said that the Gabai Tzedakah, that he has to pay for it. He has to pay the money that was lost. So Amar Abaye Tanya, much more that you're liable if you gave it to you to watch, but not if he gave you to give out to the poor. And so since it was meant to give out to the poor, we shouldn't obligate him for this negligence. Amar Aniya de Pumpadisa makes kitzlahu v'lishmarhu. No, the poor people of Pumpadisa, they have groups for each person for each week according to their needs, and they can make the claim as a result of this money. And so, therefore, this case it says he's giving it to him to watch, meaning to say that these poor people brought the money. He's considered as though he's watching it for the poor people, and so since he was negligent for them, he'll have to pay. Hachovel. We'll return to the beautiful chapter of Hachovel, and now we're up to the 9th chapter of Bava Kamma, which is called a Gozel Eitzim, one who robs wood. So it says the Mishnah, a Gozel Eitzim Melson Kalim, let's say steal wood, and you turn it into a chair or a table, or a tzemer, you steal wool, Vasim Begadim, you sew it into a sweater. Mishalim Kishas, since you made a change in the object, therefore you're going to be considered that you stole, but you only have to pay for what you stole for at the value at the time of the theft. Meaning not the value of the chair, but the value of the wood at the time of the theft. Gazal para uberasiol. Let's say a person steals a pregnant cow, and the cow gives birth, or rachel to una kizaza, a lamb which requires shearing, mishalim to make para medesli, and he pays the value. Under those circumstances, he pays the value of a cow about to give birth, or the value of a sheep that's about to be sheared. Gazal para v'nis abra etzlo. Let's say he steals a cow and she became pregnant with him and gave birth. Rachel v'nitana etzlo ugezaza, or the sheep and then it grew its shearings. Mishalim kishas aksila. He pays like the time it was stolen because it got pregnant and sheared and got the wool in its new owner's property. The rule is all the robbers pay what it was valued at the time of the theft. Amri, let's say you steal wood and you turn it into a utensil, then he's acquired them. But shifar, but let's say he just smoothed them down, whoa, that's not considered to be acquired them. Samar v'asam begadim leaving on low. If he got wool and he turned into clothing, then he has to pay the value of what it was at the time of the theft. But if he just whitened it, he doesn't have to pay. If there are many, but we have a contradictory source. That also, if he does this other change, if he sheared the wood, or if he sanded the wood, or smoothed the rocks, or whitened the wool, or if he turned it into flax, and he cleansed it out of the bad parts of it, he pays by the time it was theft. So we see from here, why does our Mishnah require such a great change to actual utensil or to an actual garment? Why don't we just say you just smoothed it down or just whiten the wool? The Tana of our Mishnahs are the position that even though biblically speaking, the type of change which you acquire is only an irreversible change. Nevertheless, Chachamim instituted that even if it's a reversible change, you acquire it. And so therefore, the kol shekain shinoi midiraisa. And for sure, if the change, and for sure, if it's an irreversible change, it doesn't go back because that's a biblical change. So the Abaye explains his answer. Eitzim asam kelim be'eitzim mishufim. When it says wood and it turns into utensils, we're talking about wood that is slanted. If you take boards and you turn them into utensils, the shinoi the hadu of riyasa. That's a change that could go back, because if he wants to, he could take out the boards and he can put them back to the previous state. It's that Tzemer Vasim Begadim, wool then turns it into clothing. Vitzemer Tavoy. This is by spun wool. The Shunoi Dado of Riyasu, he can also go back because he can uncover the wool. Because came shinoi dirais, and for sure it's we say a rabbinic shinoi is acquired even if it's a reversible change, and for sure if it's a biblical change, it's going to acquire. If it's a change that doesn't go back dirais, we say biblically is acquired. And Tana Bara and the Brisa, when it says these types of changes, it talks about shinoi dirais the katani, vishinoi derabana lo katani. The Brisa says specifically if he steals wood and smooths it out or stones and he hews them, he's talking about a biblical shinoi diaraisa katani. He's talking about a change that he recognizes biblically. But shinoi dirabanan, but rabbinic one, like for example, the wood was slanted, he turns into utensils lo katani. It's not talking about. Says the Gemara, Rav Ashi Amar Tana Didan Nami Shinoi diaraisa katani. Or the Tana of our Mishnah is also talking about a change that's biblical, it doesn't go back. And what are we talking about? That was we went to the Mishnah, Eitzim v'asim kilim, when he turned into utensils. Dainu shifan, excuse me, what are we talking about? When he turned into utensils? We're talking about buchani, that's a pesel, dainu shifan. Meaning to say, it's sufficient to smooth it out. You don't need any engraving. And that will never be able to go back. And Semar v'asim begadim, wool, it turns into clothing. What we're talking about there is not made, felt. It doesn't require whitening. And the Hainu Shinoi do other. That's a Shinoi that doesn't go back. The Libon Hare Shinoi is whitening. The Libon Miyav Shinoi is whitening really a change. Veraminu. Always pick with no low Achitzav. Potter. If he didn't have time to give to the Kohen until he died it, he's going to be exempt. Because he acquired it. But Libno Velot Saro, but if he whined and it did not, Tzavo, he did not die at his chayiv, because then he has to give it to the Kohen. So we see that Libun is not considered like a change. Rabbi Hokash, Rabbi Shimon al Rabban. The Tanya Tivau Varago, let's say he weaves it and spins it, Emet Starif, he does not combine to the other wool. So we have to do Rishis Agaz. But Limno, Rabbi Shimon Omer Emet Starif, Chamor Emet Starif. So Rabbi Shimon says that if he just bleached it, it's not going to be like he brought together 5 lambs, and the Chum says mitzarif. So they're arguing whether or not libun is considered a change that takes it out of Rishis Agaz or Rishis Agaz or not. Rava Amar Havaha Rabbi Shimon. Both are Rabbi Shimon Wakasha. Excuse me. Hada Nafte Nefutze. One is where it's combed. Vahada Sarke Saruke. One is where it's done by hand. And one is done with a comb. Rav Chibur Abin says the Chaver Chavurei, where he whitened it with unusual whitening, and had the Kavre Kavaruye. And one is where he put it in the basket, and that's how whitened. So that's only going to be considered a shinoi. Hashta yesh lo mart sevel Rabbi Shimon lo havishinu. Now that we said that dying according to Rabbi Shimon is not a change, v'libu and havishinoi, and whitening is a change. The Tanya Gazaz Rishon Tavo. Rishon Tavo. It says if he sheared it and then he dyed it and then he spun it, Rishon Varago, he wove it, Emet Starif. Shimon Yehuda, Omer Shimon Tavo Mitzarif. That if he dyed it, it is Mitzarif. So Rabbi says, Lokasha, Ha Rabbanon leave it to Rabbi Shimon, Ha Shimon leave the Rabbanon. Rabbi Amar Olam Lo Pligi, Rabbanon leave the Rabbi Shimon Yehuda. Really, the rabbis are not arguing with Rabbi Shimon. Mishani Tzeva, dying is different. Because you couldn't get rid of the dyeing through like a soap. Like a Tani Hasam, and Mishnah Chulun, well, his pick, wait, no. That's we're talking about a Kala Ilan, that's we're talking about indigo. You can't get rid of it. Okay, we did a little quickly here, but God willing on Shabbos, we'll go much slower and in more detail about this stuff. Everybody should have a good day. Shikoyach.